Hello, we are Kyungjin and Subin. We are your tour guides of Gyeongbokgung for today. We have seen many beautiful buildings of Gyeongbokgung. We will see the last two buildings of today's tour, Hyangwon-dong and Gyeongchonggung. Now we are going to the royal family's private pavilion, Hyangwon-dong. It means the scent is spread widely. It is different from the gigantic pavilion Gyeongharu which we've seen before. The previous building was a pavilion for parties with many people such as foreign envoys. However, Hyangwon-dong, as you can see, was just a small building for the king and his family to take rest and enjoy the nature. You may think its size with the pond is not that small. However, in the early times of Joseon, there was just a pond and a small pavilion named Churojong. Then while King Gojong built a new building, he expanded the pond and made an artificial island in the middle with a two-floored pavilion of a hexagonal roof. The wooden bridge called Chiyangyo was also made by him too. It means the lotus fragrance is spreading far by the wind, and the one who is watching the pavilion is already intoxicated by the scent. Originally, this bridge was not located on the south side. It was burnt down during the Korean War, which broke out on June 25, 1950. So in 1953, it was rebuilt in the south of the pavilion. Stone props are remained on the north side of Hyangwon-dong as the trace of the original location of the bridge. The shape of this building comes from the yin and yang theory. The pond is square-shaped and the land in the middle is round. We call this Cheonwon-jibang, which is one of the characteristics of Korea's ponds, making a round island in the middle of a square pond. Do you know where the water of the pond comes from? It comes from an artificial spring on the northwest side of the pond. This you are looking right now is called Yeolsang Jinwon, meaning Yeolsang is the true origin of the Han River. And here we can see our ancestors' science. The cold water that comes from the Baekak mountain doesn't go immediately into the pond. It stays in the spring and then flows into the pond slowly, which makes it meet oxygen in this process, becoming warm and more clean. This is how the fish in the pond could live without getting shocked by the cold water suddenly coming out from the spring. I would like to introduce you two facts, one interesting and one tragic. The interesting story about Hyangwon-dong is that this place was the first place where electricity generated in Korea. This is the stone monument which records the beginning of the electricity in Korea. Also in Edison's book, he said in the Far East, a very small country also had his invention. It was on March 6, 1887, in the 24th year of King Gojong's reign, the people in the palace officially celebrated lighting up 750 electric bulbs at the Gyeongchonggung building in Gyeongbokgung Palace. Back then, not only the people from inside, but also people from outside the building gathered to see this great event. However, the hot water made for electricity flowed into the pond and killed the fish, which made people calling electric bulbs monsters. By this, we can realize that Joseon's electricity inflow was 2 years earlier than those of China and Japan. However, the Hyangwon Pond is also the place where the Japanese threw the ashes after burning the dead body of Empress Myeongsong or Queen Min they killed in Gyeongchonggung. This story will be told in description later on by Subin. Hyangwon spring, summer, autumn, and winter scenes are all very beautiful. I would recommend you to have a chance to see all 4 seasons.
Now let's look at the next spot called Gyeongchonggung. In Korean, gung means palace, so you can easily understand that this place was a palace inside the palace. This area was built in 1873 deep inside the palace by the 26th King Gojong. This king rose on the throne in a very young age, and his father led the politics instead of him. However, as he grew up, he wanted to have his own political ideas, so he built this house with his own money. As the construction of the buildings can be seen as an expression of his own will and escape from the influences by his father, here the king declared the political independence from his father. He wanted to have the courage of his convictions and engage in the politics by his own. This place includes several buildings, and they were each used for the king's living quarter, queen's living quarter. There were also the buildings to store the portraits of the kings during the whole dynasty. Also, in its appearance, you can notice that the buildings don't have colorful paintings, which is used in most of the buildings in the palace. This was also because the king had to build the house secretly. He wasn't able to be fully away from his father's influence to use a lot of money, and the paintings were very expensive. Also, the king did not have the reason to decorate the house brilliantly, as there was the portraits of the dead kings. Now let's look through the events held in this place. There was a historic moment of Korea here in 1887. As Kyungjin mentioned before, electric lights were installed for the first time in Korea here. Although there was some good event like this place also became the center of whirlpool of politics in the late 17th century. Queen Myeongsong, the wife of the 26th king, was killed by the Japanese here on October 8, 1895. To tell you about this event specifically, I would like to talk about the relation between Japan and Korea. Historically, Korea was invaded by the Japanese for about 30 years in the beginning of the 20th century. The King Gojong and his wife were in the politics just before the invasion, so actually they suffered a lot of interruptions by the Japan. Especially following the victory in the Sino-Japanese War from 1894 to 1895, Japan bothered more aggressively in Korea's domestic affairs. To ask for help and seek for the freedom of the country, the Empress turned to Russia for support. As the Japan was taking precaution of Russia, they did not want Korea's politics to be taken part by them. So Japanese assassins broke into the palace and stabbed the queen to death. They then burnt the body of her and threw away the bones on the pond next to the building, which was mentioned by Kyungjin before. As a queen of a country, this was a very stigmatic and insulting incident. After this event, the king felt frightened and moved to the Russian embassy for about a year. After a year, he actually came back to the Gyeongbokgung Palace, but not to this building. This building, which lost its owners, were completely torn down in 1909 and was restored in 2007 to open to the public. These were the informations me and Kyungjin would like to talk to you about Hwangwonjeong and Gyeongbokgung in the main palace of Joseon Dynasty.